Hello team and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce, Ukraine War Frontline update for the 29th of December 2023. Let's get to the front line via the key to my map. If you don't know what the lines on my map mean, please pause the video and check that out. And thank you very much in advance to JR who has done the mapping today. What an utter legend. Now, before we get to the mapping, there's lots of rumors. In fact, I could do another news update right now. I've got enough stuff stacked up for tomorrow to give me a complete set of videos, and we haven't had all that's going to happen overnight and all the news that filters through from today that takes place overnight. Anyway, one of the things that has just sort of come to the fore at the moment, I can't verify that this has happened, so take it with a massive block of salt. There is information that the Ukrainian military has just shot down a Russian Tu-22M3 long-range strategic bomber in Kursk region. Now, if that has happened, Kursk being up here, if there's a long-range bomber operating there, and it has been taken down, then what's done that? And that's interesting. Another thing I've noticed is that there is evidence that the VKS, the Russian Air Force, are still using their guided glide bombs in the eastern area. So that could be around Avdiivka, sort of Bakhmut, and whatnot. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Patriot system popping up somewhere else and shooting down some Russian airframes. At least that's what I'd like to see, obviously, but that may well happen soon. I don't know. Right, just to go to some preamble from the Institute for the Study of War, ISW here, the American military think tank. Russia has officially deployed a battalion formed of Ukrainian prisoners of war in the front line in Ukraine, further confirming a myriad of apparently Russian violations of the Geneva Convention on POWs. Recent incidents of apparent Russian violations of the Geneva Convention on POWs likely implicate elements of the now notorious 76th Guards Air Assault VDV division in the abuse of POWs. So there's a couple of things to say about this. First of all, Russians really are moral monsters. In fact, there's some footage coming out of some Ukrainians capturing a whole kind of group of Russian soldiers all in one. And that's just how it should be done, rather than we've seen now evidence of a POW battalion here being formed. We have seen Ukrainian soldiers be used as human shields twice in the last week or so, and we've seen the execution of Ukrainian POWs by Russian forces. So I think there's chalk and cheese operating on the front line. The Russian military command will reportedly disband the Cascade Operational Combat Tactical Formation of the Donetsk People's Republic, the DNR, according to Internal Affairs Ministry, by December the 31st, or that might be not according to, but that might be part of what the Cascade is of. Now, as it says here, likely as part of Russia's ongoing force formalization. This is interesting because 2014 onwards, you had the Little Green Men operating, which was under the guise of the DNR and LPR. So, or DPR, LPR, DNR, LNR. So Donetsk People's Republic, Luhansk People's Republic, and these were supposedly the militants, working against Ukrainian rule from within Russia, and these were supposedly Ukrainian people, just pro-Russian Ukrainians, but their ranks were filled with little green men that had their insignias taken off their uniform, and these were basically Russian soldiers. Now that's been pretty much admitted by Putin and by all the evidence, really. But despite that being an illegal war, there's still this pretense that you got the LNR and DNR, but actually they're trying to subsume those units into the Russian armed forces in general, the kind of conventional armed forces hierarchy. So this appears to be part of that project whereby you won't have those kind of militias anymore. It'll just be the Russian army, and there's no pretense that this is anything other than Russia against Ukraine. But anyway, I thought that was worth pointing out. Right, if we go to the northeastern axis from Kupiansk here to Svatovo to Crimea, there's quite a bit of movement on the mapping down near Crimea. We'll just pop into Sinkivka, where there's been a lot of activity from the Russians, particularly recently. And they've been banging their head against a brick wall here, sending column after column to be destroyed. They've lost a lot of equipment up there. And I showed you, or I referenced this bit of footage that shows already some Russian destroyed vehicles by the side of the road. And then you had, in fact, Reporting from Ukraine did a video on this last night, so go and check that out. The video shows a Russian set of mechanized equipment, 5 pieces. One sort of waits behind in the trees for some unknown reason. 4 pieces come out. The first one is hit. This is classic tactics, actually. So the first one was hit, then the 4th one was hit, which meant the ones in between were kind of stuck. Then they had to veer off to the side to go around the one that had been hit by artillery, and then that was hit. Then that blew up on a mine, and then later on the 5th one comes along when all the others have been blown up, and then tries, for some reason, on its own, tries to go around the outside of them all to do some kind of single-handed attack, and it gets blown up on mines. And so the Ukrainians appear to be able to, I presume, to release mines from these ram artillery shells that release a whole bunch of mines, so you can fire them into the air behind enemy lines, and even if you think you've mine cleared an area, you can just fire some more mines in, and then the enemy will trundle on top of the mines. So it's doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results is the definition of insanity. Here we have that taking place in Sinkivka, but I have mentioned that a number of times. There is another sort of bad day at the office for the Russians. The video footage just coming out of Yahidne. So this is moving to the east now, to Yahidne over here, where it looks like the Russians have lost a bunch of stuff again. 2 tanks and several armoured fighting vehicles were destroyed, as according to this footage. So go and check it out. This one's Military Lab has it on Twitter, so if you want to check it out, go and check out Military Lab. It's just to say that the Russians are losing quite a lot of equipment in this northeastern axis. It's not to say they aren't making gains, although I don't think they really have made any gains near Kupiansk recently. But they are making gains further to the south near Terny and north of the salient that goes towards Yampolivka and Torska. Or sorry, not Zarichno and Torska. The one moving towards Yampolivka and Terny here having some success. The Russians pushing the Ukrainians back, as according to both mappers there. Although, interestingly, not particularly mentioned in the ISW. They say one Russian mill blogger claimed that Russian forces captured 2 unspecified Ukrainian positions near Sinkivka, but that's not been observed by ISW, or indeed not reflected by the mappers. Another Russian mill blogger claimed that Russian forces were moving slowly in the Kupiansk direction, so again further up north, prioritizing strikes on Ukrainian assets over making gains in ground assaults. I don't think they have particularly made any gains anyway, so you can try and sell that how you like. More success further down here, as mentioned by Turiat Maps here, in the Terny direction. So the Russian army continue advancing their claim towards Terny. The troops are now 2 kilometers from the town. So this is a bit of a worry. I mean, in and of itself, taking land here isn't like a huge concern. The concern is if they can get to the river. Like at some point, you've got to say, right now, okay, that's a bit of an issue. They're close enough here that this is causing us a bit of a headache. I wonder where it starts becoming an issue for the Ukrainians. I mean, does it matter that the Kherabets River goes to the Russians? I mean, it's going to make it more difficult for the Ukrainians going forward to retake, because it can become a defensive line there. But I don't know that it has that much significance, because the man is further back here. I would say if the Russians were to get sort of here, that's when you've got a bit of a problem. But I wouldn't say this presents too huge a problem, given that we are going to see Russian advances in this period of time over winter. But you just hope that at some point the Ukrainians, at some point, the Ukrainians will have to put their foot down and say, right, we are going to defend this area more vociferously than we defended previous advances. And then as we come further to the south, where we pass Seversk and we come to this Seversk front north of Bakhmut, we see some further gains for the Russians, as according to Syriac maps. This has been an area that the Russians have had significant success over the last week, both here and Spirna as well. So inside Spirna, they're having some success, and moving along this railway line north of Vasile, it's kind of northeast of this northwest of this southern Bilharivka and Berestova there. So what does the ISW have to say about this area? They do mention that there is Russian elements are continuing to make marginal advances near Spirna and unsuccessfully attack near Vasile. So that unsuccessful attack for the ISW looks like a successful attack for Surat Map. So who knows what the actual truth is here, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Russians are advancing there. The Russian army continue advancing, they say, around Spirna. That's further up north. In addition, troops made new advances along the railway towards the settlement of Avdiivka. So again, not huge operational concern this, but at some point, it gets worrying for Seversk. Seversk is somewhere that you definitely don't want to lose. And, the thing about holding any ground is it acts as a buffer. So, that is less of a buffer that Ukrainians have. There's quite a bit of, I think, undulation around here, quite a lot of hills for the Russians to contend with. And, although that looks fairly flat, there is, sorry, it's quite difficult here. I'll see if I can get in. You can see the hills around here. This is where they're fighting at the moment. I don't know whether that's going to present more of a challenge for the Russians, whether the Ukrainians can use some of these high areas to their advantage. I guess we'll see going forward. But the Russians are certainly having more success there than they've had in a long time. And then we come down to Bakhmut. Not a crazy amount to report really about Bakhmut. There is, according to deep state maps, some Russian gains around north of Bodanivka here, sort of lining up with what Surat Maps claimed yesterday. Andrew Perpetua, a little bit further back, still conservative there, or not having done the mapping in that area yet. We shall see. So that is generally in the Bakhmut area. Bakhmut drone hits Ukrainian positions east of Klishchiivka. So this is what the ISW says of Bakhmut, that there's geolocated footage published on the 20th. So that, goodness me, that's a long time ago. Let's see. This is the 28th. That surprises me. So that's unless that's a typo. They don't normally go 8 days back in a bit of geolocation because that's rendered obsolete effectively. There's no point of having an 8-day-old geolocation. Well, let's have a look at it, actually. It'll be dated here, December the 23rd. Why would they have done that? I've only just noticed that. Anyway, this shows that the Ukrainians are further to the east than maybe they had thought previously. But if that's 8 days old, then it doesn't really matter. Okay. The Ukrainians could well be there as of 8 days ago, but 8 days is a long time, especially around there. Now, I did my live yesterday, and I can't confirm anything about the provenance of Ursus, who is someone who claims he's fighting for the Foreign Legion, or the International Legion around here. And he said it was really tough. They're getting hammered. There was phosphorus, and in fact, it was quite a depressing set of comments he was making, saying that he's lost a couple of people and it's not looking good there for any of them, and they look like they've been cut off. So I can't speak to what his claims are, but he was previously on another live saying that they had success around here. That was reflected in mapping a day or so later, so it seemed pretty kosher what he was claiming, that Ukrainians have made some gains. And then it seems yesterday that the Russians have been doing well in fighting back in that area. So I guess we'll have to wait and see if anything has taken place around Klishchiivka. But it is tough around there. The Ukrainians still appear to be fighting for these trenches. The Russians still appear to be trying to take control of the whole of the trenches. Last I know, according to Deep State and Andrew Perpetuas, the Russians have control over half of them. Surat Mats had some time ago then controlling the whole of it, but I think that was highly unlikely. They seem to have taken it in one day, and these are extensive trench networks, as you can see here. So stretching, for quite a few. In fact, let's measure that now. Really stretching, I guess, good kilometre plus in that area. So I would think it was unlikely they took that in one day. So I think that was an overzealous bit of mapping from Surat Maps, and it's probably more accurate as according to Deep State and Andrew Perpetua. Anyway, no other news really to report there. There's a lot of a lot of spiel in the ISW, but nothing really to write home about. Then we're going to go to Avdiivka, or actually before we get there, it does say Russian sources claim that Ukrainian forces attacked near Myolska and that there are elements of the Russian forces operating around Horlivka. So that is to say that Myolska, just down here, south of Kurdimivka, down where the canal meets the railway line, I believe. So the canal comes down here. You've got the railway junction there of Myolska. The Russians control that town, as according to Syriac maps, a bit more conservative for Andrew Perpetua, where they're pushed back somewhere back into the town. But there could be some Ukrainian activity there, and there could be some activity still going on around Horlivka, this Pivdeni area, where there are these big slag heaps. Haven't heard anything about that for about a week now. We're going to come to Avdiivka, and the first thing to say about Avdiivka is quite extraordinary. This Zelensky was there today. Zelensky was at the sign for Avdiivka. Like, I don't think you realise how insane that is. So the Ukrainian President Zelensky travelled to the frontline city of Avdiivka, visiting positions of the Ukrainian 110th Mechanized Brigade. First part of the video was filmed in the open, roughly 1 kilometre from the front. Someone else here saying, did Zelensky just shoot a video less than 2 kilometres away from the hottest front line in Ukraine? Either or, it is damned close. So let's go and have a look at that on my map here. So this is right next to here. It looks like it's somewhere there. So a measurement, as far as I see it, that is basically 1 to 2 kilometers from the actual front line. And that is incredible. Would you ever see Putin do that? No, of course you wouldn't. Zelensky has some serious kahunas there to do that. Cojones. That is impressive. Or insane and risky, but if he's got away with it, it's just impressive. So he is there. I guess that it's like sticking his fingers up to Putin's. Yeah, you can bomb us, you can hit us with missiles and shaheeds all night long, but I'm still going to turn up and congratulate my troops on the front line. What are you going to do, Putin, bunker boy? Is kind of what he's saying there, and I think, good on him for saying that. Anyway, some movement on the front line here. Deep State map has some Russian gains just north of Stepova. There's been a bit of a to and fro around Stepova, but the Russians have been gaining more consistently north of there. And certainly along the railway line towards Ocheretny, or whatever, however you pronounce that. There's some Syriac maps claimed gains of the Russians around a filtration plant just southeast of Terikon, of this slag heap there by the coke plants. So some continued success for the Russians there, as according to Syriac maps. And indeed, that is what they say. Situation north of Avdiivka. Following the resumption of offensive operations, the Russian army made new advances in the northern dachas adjacent to the water treatment facilities. They don't seem to say anything about the gains, any gains to the south, although Deep State map have some gains for the Russians just towards Siverny, north of both Opitny and Vodyany. Some gains more in line with Syriac maps going towards what their understanding of the front line is there. Just going to go back to the ISW. So Russian mill bloggers claim that Russian forces advance up to 800 meters from Siverny. That is, so if we take Siverny and we look at what 800 meters is, that is 1 kilometer. So I guess 800 meters is where Syriac maps claims they are. That's about 800 meters. Yep. So that would be a claim from Syriac maps. So Russian mill bloggers claimed. Doesn't mean that that's definitely the case, but there is a claim that they're 800 meters from Siverny, near Ocheretny, along the railway line, and in the industrial zone. I presume that is an advance in those two places. Stupin, who's a Ukrainian state spokesman, says that Russian forces have doubled their use of loitering munitions and increased the number of glide bomb strikes with Su-34 and Su-35 aircraft in this direction, which includes Avdiivka, Western Donetsk, and Zaporizhzhia Oblast. So we had heard that, and this is what I was mentioning earlier, it'd be nice to see the Patriot system turn up and take out some Russian planes here. We'd heard that they've been quiet around the Mariinka Novobakhmutivka area, Novomakalivka area. Too many names. That they've been quiet there because there had been a Su-34, I think it was a Su-34 shot down in the Mariupol direction, and that put a pause for them flying sorties. They might well have picked up flying them again and are dropping in this general area, as according to at least that source. Right, so that is Avdiivka. No change as far as I can see in either Mariinka or Novomakalivka. So welcome bit of quiet there for the Ukrainians, but that doesn't mean it won't mean anything tomorrow. I mean, these things kind of stop and start often, and next day could find some gains for the Russians. Who knows? We're going to bring ourselves past Velika Novosilka and come to the Robotyne area on the southern front line in the Zaporizhzhia Oblast, where we have Andriy Perpetua seeing some gains, just small gains for the Russians west of Verbove in some tree lines alongside a road there. So a bit of a gain for them, but that's not as far as Syria Maps already has the Russian control. We saw some really quite far-reaching gains for the Russians coming up alongside Robotyne, somewhat to the east of Robotyne, and that's been worrying over the last couple of days. No changes there today, but still, this is quite a problematic area, I think, for the Ukrainians. The question is whether they actually really want to hold on to it. How much value does it have for them to hold on to the Robotyne salient? As we look at the ISW, there is just a little bit that I point out here. One Russian mill blogger citing alleged unspecified Ukrainian military analysts claimed that Russian forces advance west of Robotyne and along the Novoprokopivka-Verbove line, south and east of Robotyne. Russian source claimed that Ukrainian forces secured a small foothold north of Verbove on the 27th of December. So that's interesting. The claim is that, the Russians are advancing in this southern area between Novoprokopivka and Verbove and east of Robotyne, really. But also, did they say west of Robotyne as well? So that would be over the Kopani direction. We did have some advances there yesterday, so that's probably referring to yesterday's claims, but also that possibly the Ukrainians have made some advance somewhere north of Verbove over the last couple of days. Anyway, that's that neck of the woods for you. No more being heard from the sort of Kamyanska area, where we saw some fairly big mapping changes yesterday, relatively speaking, and no changes from any of the mappers to the Krynky area. It is, like I've said to you before, I think it's a case of the Ukrainian forces there, 200 to 300 forces, being effectively used as bait to bring in and fix the Russian forces in the general area, both personnel and mechanized equipment, and then the drones and artillery and gimlers and whatever else can absolutely hammer the Russians in place there, and that seems to be what is happening. Destroyed Russian equipment in the vicinity of Krynky on the left bank of the Kherson region, says this video. So let's just, while I have a little chat to you about Krynky, let's just have a look to see what they see. And I think this is a place where the Russians are being made to work for the gains that they have been making, small gains in pushing the Ukrainians back. The Ukrainians still have that bridgehead, but it comes at a cost. As you can see here, an awful lot of trucks and civilian vehicles such as Bukhankas, SUVs and whatever that the military use to ship stuff and personnel around. It's a bit of a graveyard of that equipment in that area. oops, sorry, Krynky has apparently lost, I mean, variously, some people are saying geolocated at least 60 to 70 pieces of equipment as a benchmark minimum. Some people are saying 150 to 200 pieces of equipment in that whole general area. It is something of an equipment graveyard at the moment. And here is an image of apparently what Krynky actually looks like now. So it's very much like Klishchivka, like Mariinka, like Novomykhailivka is going to shortly become. This is not cool, but yeah, you know, there are many images of similar such places, as you can see here. This is liberation, isn't it? You know, you look at all of these. There's Krynky, well done Russia. There's Avdiivka, well done Russia. There's Bakhmut, well done Russia. There's more Bakhmut, well done Russia. There's Mariinka, absolute rubble-strewn hellscape. And Blahodatny in the Mykolaiv region. Yep, so more destruction. That is, it appears to be what liberation looks like. And I keep saying that, but we've got to remind ourselves, you know, what Russia are doing to Ukraine in the name of liberation, which is just shorthand for attempting to genocidally wipe Ukrainian identity off the face of the earth. And that's how they do it. Anyway, thanks for watching on that positive note. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate you choosing to get your mapping updates here. Please like, subscribe and share. I've had a lot of complaints about people actually being unsubscribed, not willingly, from the channel. Somebody being unsubscribed twice in one day. So I was wondering why my viewership, the subscribers, has really ground to a halt in terms of growth as a channel, where other channels that are fairly similar have been growing quite a bit, and I just think I am being hammered for some reason by YouTube. So I think I'm going to get hold of the help department with YouTube and say, look, what's going on? Because so many comments are being deleted, like just huge torrents of comments are being deleted, and I think my channel has been gamed by trolls or something, because there are many of you still not receiving notifications, even though everything's clicked and whatnot. Anyway, thank you so much, and thanks to all of those who watched the live chat yesterday with Greg, Terry, where we're talking about this charity thing that we're doing. It seems to have been an incredible success. I just dropped him a whole bunch of money, both from yourselves and myself, for some drones today. I'll give you some feedback on that. If not tonight, maybe tomorrow. He's going to get some news about how much money has been raised at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which would be 9 p.m. my time. I don't know if I'll have time to do that, or whether I'll be ensconced within a sofa and watching some I don't know. We're watching Shetland at the moment, which is a BBC crime series, where it appears that over the 7 series of Shetland that we've watched so far, we're on the 8th series now, of the 20,000 people that live in the Shetland Island, half of them have been murdered. It must have the highest murder rate on Earth. But anyway, you don't need to know about that. So I'll feed back to you the amazing work that you guys and the collective audiences of our 3 channels, and I think Warthog did a video, Warthog Defense did a video on it as well, so it's really gathered some momentum. So many thanks to you guys for your efforts there. Anyway, take care, speak soon, Doodle Pips.